What secrets do you think lie beneath the marble splendor of ancient Rome? The iconic Colosseum, the Roman Forum, the Pantheon. These structures stand as silent sentinels of a bygone era. The Forum, the heart of ancient Rome, was a hive of activity. Senators, merchants, even emperors walked these streets. But as the centuries rolled by, so did the tides of fortune. The Forum's grandeur was matched only by the squalor of its neglected back alleys. Here, amidst the overflowing garbage and dilapidated buildings, life was cheap and hope was even cheaper. But what about the spaces in between, the bustling streets where the real life of ancient Romans played out? Imagine the teeming masses that once filled these streets. Hear the echoes of their laughter, their struggles, their whispers of love. For in these forgotten corners of the city, the true spirit of ancient Rome lives on. Welcome to our channel. And today, let's explore the secret, narrow, and hidden streets of ancient Rome. The Colosseum, a symbol of Rome's might, hosted the bloody spectacles that thrilled the masses. But behind its imposing facade, there existed a labyrinth of service tunnels and cramped workshops. Here, amidst the grime and the sweat, artisans crafted the very weapons that would be used in the games. In the shadows cast by the towering buildings, lovers carved their initials, a testament to their affection. Amidst the grime and the clamor, they found solace in each other's arms. And then there were the Via Sacra and the Via Fori Imperiali. These were not just roads. They were arteries through which the blood of the city flowed. Along these routes, street vendors hawked their wares, competing with the cries of children and the bleating of sheep. They were the stage on which life's drama unfolded. They witnessed the rise and fall of fortunes, the ebb and flow of emotions, the triumph of love and the despair of loss. They were the veins through which the lifeblood of the city coursed. The air was thick with the aroma of cooking food, mingled with the stench of stale waste. Here, amidst the push and pull of daily life, fortunes were made and lost, deals were struck and broken. But it wasn't just commerce that thrived in these crowded streets. Love, too, found its niche here. These narrow, hidden streets were not just the backdrop of ancient Rome. As you stroll through the ruins of ancient Rome today, take a moment to look beyond the Colosseum and the Pantheon. If you enjoyed this journey through the forgotten streets of ancient Rome, don't forget to subscribe for more exciting tales from history's hidden corners. There's this image of ancient Rome that we all have in our heads, isn't there? One that's informed by centuries of movies, books, and historical reenactments. Today, we're launching a new series called Romanitas, which means Roman way of life in Latin. So why do we call it Romanitas? Well, firstly, it's the root of our word Romanesque. You're surrounded by vendors hawking their wares, the smell of incense from the nearby temple, and the sound of chariot wheels rumbling over the cobblestones. Here, amidst the labyrinth of narrow streets and cramped alleyways, lived some of the poorest citizens of Rome. These streets were a far cry from the marble halls of the Senate or the luxurious villas of the rich. Here, the buildings were made of cheap materials like brick and concrete, and the rooms were dark and dank with little ventilation. The Subura was home to a diverse mix of people, including the urban poor, working-class families, servants, slaves, and foreigners. The streets were often dirty and dangerous, and residents had to contend with the noise and commotion of vendors and passers-by. However, the people of the Subura were known for their resilience and resourcefulness. They formed close-knit communities and helped each other through tough times. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the ancient Roman way of life. So leave a comment down below and tell us what aspects of Roman culture you'd like us to explore in future episodes. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks for joining us today, and until next time, remember to stay curious. Despite the hardships they faced, the people of the Subura found ways to bring beauty and joy into their lives. They celebrated religious festivals, sang and danced in the streets, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of life, such as a glass of wine or a loaf of bread. Because it was so overcrowded, privacy was a rare commodity. Despite the cramped and challenging conditions, they were able to create a sense of community and make their homes a reflection of their cultural values and traditions. Take a walk through the bustling streets and quiet alleyways of the Subura and imagine what it was like to live in the shadow of the empire. The people of the Subura may have been forgotten by history, but their story is an important part of the Roman legacy. The houses were usually only separated by flimsy curtains or wooden dividers. This meant that the streets themselves often became the main living space for many residents, especially during the hot summer months, when the stench of stale waste and chamber pots filled the air. You've come to see the Colosseum, the iconic amphitheater that's been drawing crowds for centuries. They developed a strong sense of community and helped each other through the tough times. Made of inexpensive materials, like brick and concrete, the buildings were crowded together in a maze of narrow streets and cramped alleyways. The interiors were dark and dank, with little ventilation, and residents had to share common areas, like bathrooms and kitchens, with their neighbors. Despite the cramped conditions, the people of the Subura were known for their resilience and resourcefulness. They made the most of their limited space and created a strong sense of community. They also found ways to bring beauty and joy into their lives through music, poetry, and art. Although the Subura has largely been forgotten by history, it was an integral part of ancient Rome. Understanding the lives of the people who lived here gives us a more complete picture of what it was like to live in the ancient world. But as you make your way through the throngs of tourists, you can't help but notice the other sights around you. The grimy laundry hanging outside a tenement building, the haggard faces of the beggars, and the stench of waste that fills the narrow alleys. Entering the house, you would find yourself in a small courtyard. Surrounding the courtyard were various rooms, including a kitchen, dining area, bedrooms, and bathroom. In the center of the courtyard was a small fountain, or a pool for collecting rainwater, which was used for household tasks such as cooking and cleaning. Although the rooms were small and the conditions were cramped, the residents of the Subura took pride in their homes and decorated them with murals, mosaics, and sculptures. The courtyard was often the center of social life, and residents would gather there to eat, socialize, and entertain guests. You realize that Rome wasn't just a place of grandeur and spectacle. It was also a city of poverty and grime. Think of those European churches with their rounded arches and heavy stone masonry. They're called Romanesque because they were inspired by the architecture of ancient Rome. But beyond that, Romanitas represents more than bricks and mortar. It's a way of life. That's because ancient Rome was not just a collection of buildings and monuments, but a complex society with its own distinct culture. Romans had their own art and literature, customs and traditions, values and beliefs. In short, they had a unique way of life. We see the grand monuments, the aqueducts, the amphitheaters, the public baths, the columns. But today, we want to start small, very small. Today, we're going to take a peek inside the houses of ancient Rome. More specifically, the shacks of the Subura, one of Rome's most infamous slums. And if we're really lucky, we catch a glimpse of the Colosseum when the sun sets and it lights up against the twilight sky. But what about the rest of Rome? The everyday sights, sounds, and smells that permeated the streets and the homes? Welcome back to the channel. In this series, we'll be exploring all aspects of ancient Roman culture, from the grand spectacles of the Colosseum to the everyday life of a Roman citizen. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling streets of ancient Rome. Welcome to the Subura, the slum-like district nestled between the Aventine and Palatine hills. Despite the hardships they faced, the people of the Subura were resourceful and tight-knit. The houses in the Subura were a far cry from the luxurious mansions of the wealthy elite. Here's a glimpse at a typical house in the Subura. Life in the Subura was not without its challenges. Overall, The houses in the Subura were a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of the Roman people. And so, as you stand there taking in the sights and sounds of ancient Rome, don't forget to look beyond the Colosseum and the Forum. Now, before we wrap up today's episode, let's talk about how you can get involved in the Romanitas series. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going back in time 2,000 years. We'll explore a world of noise and dirt, garbage and crowds, a place where gladiators gambled, merchants hawked their wares, and emperors occasionally stumbled around drunk. This is the story of ancient Rome's most authentic neighborhood. Let's get started. Rome wasn't just a city of grandeur. Sure, it had massive monuments and awe-inspiring ruins. But between the Colosseum and the Pantheon, there was a lot of smelly reality. Some are modest two-story structures with flat roofs, perfect for strolling during evening strolls. Sharing a bathroom is never fun, especially when it's a communal latrine. You can imagine how things can get messy and smelly. And don't even think about having any privacy. Street vendors played instruments to attract customers. Entertainers performed for the amusement of passers-by, and locals sang and danced at festivals and gatherings. But it's not just the sights and sounds that make this neighborhood come alive. Every morning, the head of the household, usually the oldest male, makes offerings to the gods, hoping for their blessing for the day ahead. They seem to be everywhere, crowing loudly at all hours of the day. It's their way of announcing their presence to the world, much to the annoyance of sleep-deprived Romans. Here, amidst the stench and the noise, life unfolded in all its rawness and honesty. Can you hear the distant echoes of laughter and chatter? Do you smell the faint aroma of cooking spices carried on the wind? These are the intangible remnants of a bygone era, the whispers of everyday life in the grand city of Rome. It was a world of contrasts, where poverty and wealth existed side by side, where despair and hope intertwined. If you enjoyed this adventure into the heart of ancient Rome, don't forget to show your support. Click the like button and subscribe for more immersive historical experiences. Together, let's keep exploring, keep learning, and keep discovering the wonders of our shared past. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and remember, history is more than just dates and facts. It's a vibrant tapestry of human experience waiting for us to uncover and appreciate. But despite the hardships, the residents of Rome found ways to hold on to their humanity, their dignity, their sense of community. They turned their shared struggles into a shared strength, creating a bond that transcended their differences. And though history may have forgotten their names, it can't erase their story. Their presence still resonates in the forgotten corners of the ancient city, whispering tales of resilience, resourcefulness, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Whether perched atop rooftops or strutting through the streets, these feathered fiends create a cacophony that echoes through the insula. These rituals bring a sense of familiarity and comfort to the residents, reminding them of the importance of family and tradition. The flavors of Rome are equally enticing. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted from the bakeries, tempting passers-by with its warm, yeasty smell. The tangy scent of vinegar mingled with the savory fragrance of roasted meat from the butcher shops. These sensory delights created a culinary symphony that tantalized the taste buds and left one craving a bite of Roman cuisine. Music was everywhere. The sounds of blacksmiths, hammering away at their work, echoed through the insula, blending with the melodic tunes of street musicians. The clatter of tools created a rhythmic backdrop for the bustling city, a testament to the skilled craftsmanship of the Roman artisans. Your neighbors are always around, and they won't hesitate to barge in at the worst possible moment. Families spill out onto the narrow streets, finding solace and joy in the company of their neighbors. Children chase each other through the maze-like alleys, their laughter echoing through the darkness. The elders sit on stoops sharing stories and sipping wine, while the younger folks dance to the tunes of street musicians. Even the dim oil lamp lighting could not extinguish the spirit of camaraderie that thrived in these humble streets. Others are taller, more complex buildings with elaborate decorations and spacious balconies. For instance, there's the Obeliscan, distinguished by its towering obelisk in the center, and the Constantinian, named after its proximity to Emperor Constantine's column. But regardless of their size and design, all insulas have one thing in common. They're built to accommodate as many people as possible. They're like the high-rise buildings of modern times, except instead of glass and steel, they're made of ancient concrete and brick. He is a former slave who bought his freedom, and now he is your ticket to understanding this part of town. He says the word insula means island in Latin, but in this context, it refers to a cramped tenement building. But the lines can be long, and the journey from the fountain to your apartment can be treacherous. Carrying heavy containers of water is a daily chore for the residents. The weight of the water can be backbreaking, especially for women carrying other goods. Children aren't exempt either. They often run errands for their parents, helping them carry water and other supplies. Broken carts and wagons also pose a hazard, making navigating the crowded streets a risky affair. The constant rumble of wooden cart wheels is a familiar sound here. These carts play a vital role in transporting goods throughout the city, but they're also a source of danger for pedestrians. The driver may lose control and crash into the crowd, causing injuries and panic. Each insula housed thousands of people from different backgrounds and walks of life. Soldiers returning from the front lines, young lovers fleeing their parents, ex-slaves starting fresh, all crammed together in the heart of Rome. It's a melting pot of experiences, dreams, and stories. Picture this. The year is 180 AD. You are about to cross the threshold into the insula. Don't be fooled by the fancy paint job. The real deal is hiding behind that facade. Step inside, and you'll find yourself transported to a labyrinth of worn stone walls, broken stairs, and uneven floors. The air is thick with the scent of stale waste and chamber pots. The residents here have gotten used to it, but you might choke on the stench. To add insult to injury, the whole place is infested with cockroaches. You'll see them scuttling around the cracks and crevices of this dilapidated building. Your guide for this tour is our resident historian, Cassius Dio. The insula might look like a jumble of mismatched rooms and corridors, but it's actually well organized, if not a bit haphazard. The ground floor has shops and workshops. That's where the hustle and bustle of commerce happens, with merchants selling everything from freshly baked bread to handmade sandals. As you climb the stairs, you'll notice that each floor is supported by wooden beams. These creaky stairs lead you to the upper floors, where you'll find residential apartments. The layout varies, but generally the smaller units are reserved for lower-income folks, while the wealthier residents occupy the larger spaces. Regardless of where you live within the insula, everyone shares common areas such as courtyards and rooftop terraces. These shared spaces become a hub for socializing, gossiping, and exchanging news. It's not uncommon to see women washing their clothes in a communal tub, or men lounging around discussing politics. There are several types of insulae in Rome, each with its unique charm and challenges. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the donkey in the latrine. Speaking of unpleasantness, forget about fresh running water. Water from the public fountain is your best bet. Ancient Rome was alive with the sound of music. Next door, a tanner is working. And the smell? Oh boy, the smell is absolutely putrid. In the heart of the insula, amidst the chaos and commotion, there's a small shrine dedicated to the household gods of the family living in the apartment. And then there are the roosters. Oh, those noisy roosters. When night falls over Rome, the insula transforms into a lively gathering spot. Rome wasn't just a city of extravagance and opulence. It was also a place where ordinary people lived, laughed, and loved. So the next time you stand in the shadow of Rome's mighty monuments, take a moment to close your eyes and listen. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. In the sprawling metropolis of ancient Rome, where marble met grime and the aroma of incense battled with the stench of sewage. Certain streets held the power to shape destinies. They were cradles of creation, launching pads for revolutions, and sometimes the stage for their own destruction. These were no ordinary streets. They were threads in the rich tapestry of Roman life, weaving tales of love, war, intrigue, and culinary delights. Welcome back to the series, where we explore the unbelievable lives of the powerful and the infamous. Today, let's uncover the secrets of Rome's most dramatic streets. Imagine the bustling Via Tecta in ancient Rome, also known as the Street of Hidden Obsession. Now picture a young man named Gaius Apicius, not the gourmet chef, but a common baker by trade, living above his shop on this very street. His world was seasoned with the smoky flavors of baking bread and the tantalizing aromas wafting from hidden kitchens across the street. And these streets, far from being just thoroughfares, were characters in the grand drama of Roman life. These flavors were a secret language to the young Apicius, a melody of spices and herbs carried on the wind from Greece, Egypt, and Gaul. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating historical journeys. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. Each inhalation sparked a flame in his heart, a yearning to understand the alchemy that transformed simple ingredients into exotic delights. Little did the residents of Via Tecta know they were nurturing a culinary rebel. Apicius wouldn't just satisfy the city's hunger for bread. He would awaken their palates and make them crave for an experience. Through his cookbook, Apicius would later introduce Roman cuisine to a world of unparalleled extravagance, forever altering the city's gastronomical landscape. But the story doesn't end here. For more explosive tales of history's most unforgettable figures, don't forget to subscribe. Part 2: Unbelievable Lives and Dramatic Twists. Gaius Apicius, Via Tecta, the Street of Hidden Obsession. Slaves carrying water, artisans hammering away at their craft, traders peddling their wares, and patricians striding majestically towards the baths of Diocletian. Amidst this social melting pot lived a young slave named Felix, his world confined to the shadows of the majestic buildings lining Vicus Patricius. It was a street that mirrored the stark realities of Roman society, a chasm between the grandeur of the rich and the destitution of the poor. Felix's days were marked by drudgery, and his nights by the haunting echoes of freedom. However, fate had a twist in store. When his master's house caught fire, Felix valiantly saved him, an act of bravery that earned him his freedom and a hefty reward. With newfound liberty, he returned to Vicus Patricius and established his first public bathhouse, an establishment that would become a sensation. So much so that Emperor Claudius himself summoned him, not to punish him, but to seek the secret behind his renowned spiced roast goat. In a dramatic turn of events, Felix transformed Vicus Patricius, a street once symbolic of oppression and limitation, into the epicenter of his culinary empire. His story serves as a reminder that destiny can be carved even on the grimmest of streets. The year is 80 Felix, Vicus Patricius, where worlds collide. The year is 40 AD. Picture the street, called Vicus Patricius, also known as the Street of Worldly Delights, teeming with activity. Rome wasn't just a city. It was a living, breathing entity shaped by the ambitions, dreams, and sometimes the sheer will of individuals. That's all for today. Which street intrigued you the most? Share your thoughts below. Marcia, Clivus Publicius. The winding road to healing Marcia grew up on Clivus Publicius, a sloping road that connected the markets of the Aventine Hill to the harborside slums. Known for its laundries, midwives, and herb sellers, Clivus Publicius was filled with steam, water basins, and the daily voices of laboring women. As the daughter of a laundress, Marcia lived among buckets and boiling water, the sharp smells of soap and vinegar. But on that very slope, she met a Greek physician who taught her how to heal. Later, she became a well-known street healer. Her remedies, rosemary, crushed emeralds, fermented wine, were whispered about throughout the district. On the cracked wall of an insula along the slope, one carving remains. To Marcia of the Clivus, healer of souls when the gods turned away. No temples bore her name. No statues stood for her, but that road shaped her into a quiet legend. The nameless thousands, Vicolo Caprarius, the alley of everyday epics, and then there were the many who left no names behind. In Vicolo Caprarius, a tiny alley near what is now the Trevi Fountain, bakers, actors, firemen, and fortune-tellers lived side by side. By night, oil lamps flickered on crumbling walls etched with love poems and children's drawings of gods. In one corner, an old man rasped out tales of a drunken emperor lost in a fish market. These people had no place in written history, but their laughter, their heartbreak, their stubborn dreams made the city real. Part 3. Culture and People. The true mirror of another Rome. If temples and arenas were the towering symbols of the Roman Empire, then the forgotten streets were its truest mirror, reflecting how people actually lived, felt, and made meaning of their world. On Vicus Celeratus, long associated with the dark legend of Queen Tullia, driving her chariot over the body of her father, a different kind of story took root. Here lived Lucius Petronius, an orphan raised by the Vestal priestesses. He became a humble stone carver, but not just any carver. He was known for offering free tombstones to poor families who could not afford a proper farewell. The epitaphs he carved were never grandiose. Each morning, he chose a blank patch and drew scenes from mythology, daily life, or people's personal memories. One elderly woman asked him to recreate the moment she first met her husband under a fig tree. A child asked for a drawing of a beloved cat that had passed away. No one ever knew what Marcus was thinking, but his drawings left the neighborhood silent, then smiling. He had no words, no stage, no fortune, but his work lived in hearts and on stone, never copied and never forgotten. They read simply, "My mother was my light," or "He never missed dinner with me." But it was in these quiet streets where people loved, lost, learned, and sacrificed that the real soul of the city thrived. These individuals did not need archives to matter. They did not need medals or monuments. They only needed a street to walk, a small act of kindness, and the courage to give something back. For the people of Rome, Lucius was not just a craftsman. He was a memory keeper. In a society that often forgot the poor, even in death, Lucius gave dignity and a voice to those who would otherwise fade in silence. Not far away, along the bustling Argiletum, home to second-hand books, woodcuts, and the pulse of working-class intellectual life, stood a tiny bookshop wedged between two blacksmiths. It belonged to Julia Livia, a widow who transformed her shop into a haven of ideas. Tiberia Calva was an unlicensed healer, known throughout the district as the mother of the forgotten children. She treated wounds with herbs, cared for battered women, and most notably took in abandoned newborns left in baskets at street corners. No one kept count of how many she saved. One day, neighbors nailed a wooden plaque to her door that read, "If no one wants you, she will." Many of those children grew into tradesmen, soldiers, and merchants, and all remembered where they began, in the arms of a woman with trembling hands and unwavering heart. By the light of full moons, she would host poetry readings, philosophy debates, and impromptu rhetorical contests for an unlikely audience, including bricklayers, porters, and retired soldiers. What began as a gathering of curiosity soon became a local school of thought. Some of her attendees even went on to become city scribes and legal assistants. Julia charged nothing. "Knowledge is not to be sold," she would say. "It must be passed down." In a world where learning was locked behind status, she opened a doorway for the working mind. Farther off, on the winding slope of Clivus Publicius, near the bustling Aventine market, lived another kind of nurturer. Elsewhere, in the narrow alley of Vicolo Caprarius, near where the Trevi Fountain now stands. Live Dacus Quartus, a mute artist who painted with charcoal on walls. We often think of Rome as chariots, crowns, and marble gods. And it was these people, the ones without power, who built the most human part of Rome's history. Part 4. The other side of power, daily life among Rome's, elites and their opposites, as we journey deeper into the forgotten streets of ancient Rome. A striking contrast emerges between the quiet alleys of the poor and the marble corridors of the powerful. But what if we told you that even the elite, those draped in silk? Consider Servilia Caesonis, a noblewoman known more for her intellect than her lineage. While most elite Roman women were expected to remain silent on matters of state, Servilia hosted secret evening salons disguised as dinner parties. Unlike gladiators, charioteers could gain fame without shedding blood. Some lived so far removed from Rome's realities, they existed in glass-like bubbles, surrounded by silks from Parthia and perfumes from Alexandria. One Rome labored, dreamed, struggled, and survived by the light of oil lamps. The other sipped diluted wine beneath painted ceilings, convinced that the empire would last forever. But history does not remember only emperors and conquests. It remembers texture, contradiction, and irony. Their villas perched high above the city, with floors cooled by flowing water and gardens scented by imported myrrh. But within that luxury also grew detachment. A child of such wealth might never walk the cobblestones that a baker's feet touched, nor ever hear the language of street poets. Their version of Rome was not the people's Rome. It was a carefully curated illusion. Decimus did just that. He became one of the most beloved figures in the Circus Maximus, cheered louder than returning generals. Yet after every race, he returned to the alley of his childhood, not to boast, but to fund a school for stable boys. There, he provided writing tablets and shoes. For him, victory was not the roar of the crowd, but the quiet transformation of a gutter into a cradle for dreams. Philosophers, generals, and even spies gathered in her villa to discuss politics over bowls of honeyed figs. At the back of her house, a quiet side alley concealed a door through which slaves and messengers could pass unseen. Though her name never appeared in the Senate records, her words, carried by others, helped shape critical decisions. She never took the stage, but she wielded power from the shadows. Her daily life a careful dance between visibility and secrecy. And sipping imported wine had their own hidden streets, their own private struggles, and their own carefully crafted illusions. On the prestigious Via Sacra, senators paraded in white togas trimmed in purple. Yet behind closed doors, their lives were often more tangled than any net. Not far from there, on the luxurious slopes of the Palatine Hill, lived young Publius Cornelius, the son of a wealthy grain merchant. Unlike his peers, he grew weary of endless banquets and hollow praise. Publius used his family fortune to fund public grain distributions and build small libraries in poorer districts like Subura. He often walked there in plain clothes, hoping to listen and learn what the people truly needed. He understood that Rome's grandeur was upheld by those who labored, not those who lounged. Though mocked by other nobles as the citizen among slaves, his legacy endured in the community halls he built, each one bearing a simple inscription instead of his name. It read, "For the people who taught me Rome." At the opposite end of society lived Decimus, a charioteer born in bondage in a racing school in the Esquiline district. Still, not every elite life leaned toward virtue. The contrast was sharp, and it is in that contrast, between the highest balconies and the lowest cellars, that we discover the full story of Rome. When history whispers, listen closely. If the grand avenues of Rome shouted of triumph and conquest, then the forgotten streets whispered of resilience and humanity. Their stones may be cracked and overgrown today, their names lost in the dust of centuries, but their stories remain, woven into the soul of the eternal city. We began with simple alleyways and nameless corners, but what we uncovered was far greater. These places were not empty. It was shaped as much by the whisper of a mother comforting her child in Subura as by the roar of the Senate floor. It lived in cracked frescoes, in soot-covered walls, in the quiet deeds that never made it into the scrolls. They were filled with the footsteps of those history forgot, carvers who honored the dead, widows who educated the poor, orphans who healed, artists who spoke without words, nobles who rebelled with kindness. Let us also think of Vicus Celeratus, where a stonemason carved dignity, of Clivus Publicius, where a healer mothered the abandoned, of Vicolo Caprarius, where silent drawings brought neighbors to tears, because they remind us that greatness is not always loud. Sometimes it walks barefoot. Sometimes it teaches by candlelight. Sometimes it chooses to give without ever being thanked. To those who gave more than they took, to those whose names were never etched in triumphal arches, but were spoken in gratitude, long after their footsteps faded from the stone. Charioteers who raced not just for glory, but for hope. Rome was not built by emperors alone. It was built by people who carried water, who buried the lost, who lit lamps in the dark. And perhaps that is why these streets matter. So the next time we think of ancient Rome, let us not think only of marble and iron, of legions and emperors. Let us remember that history does not belong only to the powerful. It belongs to those who lived quietly and loved fiercely. Because in the end, it is not always the strongest who define a civilization. It is those who build, endure, protect, and remember, and those who refuse to be forgotten.